it, then stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore! First, you've got to get mad. I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore! First, you've got to get mad. I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore! George Bush, dressers up. Right here. We got him on tape.
Let's send that spell over. Oh!
Sir, everything. I don't owe you this comment.
I know. I appreciate
it. This is what's called ambush journalism, and I disrespect you for that as well. So thank you and goodbye.
Been in the ritual?
It's none of your damn business.
Oh.
That's right.
Our story begins in Northern California over 100 years ago, when locals began to spread rumors of bizarre occult rituals being conducted in the ancient redwood groves of Sonoma County. As the decades passed, it became clear these incredible stories had a basis in truth, and their source was a 2,700-acre private club known as the Bohemian Grove. Then in a time period between the mid-1970s and the early 1990s, scores of reporters attempted to infiltrate the Grove. All attempts were unsuccessful. Grove security identified them, threw them out for trespassing, or in some cases, had the local police arrest them. To many it seemed the Grove's secrets would never become public. All of that changed on July 15th, 2000, when we ripped aside the veil of secrecy and were successfully able to penetrate the Bohemian Grove on their high holy day and videotape the cremation of care ritual. Our infiltration is chronicled in my documentary film, Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove. A British documentary film company, World of Wonder, also covered our investigation.
In the weeks that followed, Alex streamed his footage on his website and released it as a sell-through video. Everywhere I looked, the internet was aflame with news of the daring raid.
As the news spread across the planet that the Bohemian Grove had been blown wide open and that their secrets were public, the people were amazed. They were amazed to learn that many U.S. presidents and British prime ministers, German chancellors, the Hollywood elite, the heads of business and academia, Federal Reserve chairmen were traveling to the Grove each year, and that presidents had been going there since the turn of the last century in 1900. They were shocked by each new revelation of ritualistic depravity. This film is about what we've learned in the 5 years since we infiltrated the Grove. And it's about the response that we've gotten from Grove members, the press, and even local activists in the area who've been protesting the Grove for over 25 years. Finally, we learned that the Grove was only one chapter in a larger, worldwide secret society hell-bent on bringing in a one-world government. What would the people do if they knew that the majority of the leaders in the corporate world, as well as government, were deep occultists? Before the year 2000 and our successful penetration of the Grove, the mainstream media denied that rituals were indeed taking place there and said that elite from all over the world were simply meeting in secret to have a good time. After the footage we had shot of the cremation of care ritual aired first in England and then in the United States on national TV, the mainstream media changed their tune. The San Francisco Chronicle had previously refused to report on the Grove. After our infiltration, they wrote as many as 5 articles a year detailing the bizarre activities that were taking place inside the Grove, including the fact that top presidential advisor Karl Rove had tapped Arnold Schwarzenegger inside the Grove to run for governor on California's recall ballot. Even the vaunted New York Times reported on the Bohemian Grove, but attacked us for sneaking in. The New York Post was one of many national publications to report on all of the homosexual activities going on at the Grove. The Post reported in its page 6 gossip column that Chad Savage, gay porno star, was, quote, servicing the moguls at the Grove. But a disturbing theme ran through the body of the reportage. Okay, it's true. The elite meet behind closed doors, and there's gay porn stars and gay prostitutes being shipped in like beluga caviar. What's the big deal? Let's just let them have their privacy. And so they have lakeside chats calling for world government. Really, they're not bad people. The people we should watch are those that are exposing it. They're really dangerous weirdos. Of all the hit pieces that we've been victims of, the worst was conducted on national television by Brian Lamb, the director of C-SPAN, and some shifty-eyed professor they dug up, who appeared to be flashing Masonic hand signs, while he tried to eviscerate our character by implying that there wasn't even a ritual at all. Why, Alex Jones claims they do this ritual. Meanwhile, the Bohemian Grove has gone public to the newspapers, admitting they conduct rituals.
Overnight, they had a gentleman on by the name of Alex Jones, who has a talk show in Texas, I think, and it's heard in communities around the United States. And he was talking about the Bohemian Grove Club, as if that's where it all happens. That's where all the decisions are made. There are thousands of people go there, and there's some kind of a ceremony surrounding an owl and all that. Have you followed this at all?
Yes, I have, even though the show is on past my bedtime. But Alex Jones has been talking about this for quite a while. The Bohemian Grove, of course, is a privately owned redwood grove up in Sonoma County, north of San Francisco, where every summer there is a get-together of the wealthy and well-placed, all male, who get together for general cavorting, socializing, lectures, symposia, and so on, in an atmosphere that is completely removed from public scrutiny. Alex Jones and some others have suggested for a long time that there are all sorts of nefarious rituals that go on, human sacrifices that were being committed by the elite who attend these gatherings.
A lot of things people feel are organized behind the scenes with the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Masons. You can keep going down the list, and the Illuminati, One World Government, New World Order, Skull and Bones. You've got more information on that than I do, so call us at the top of the hour and talk to our guest about that, and we'll try to sort it out. Define Illuminati.
The Illuminati were a small quasi-Masonic group founded in Central Europe in 1776.
There was a surprising development in the summer of 2005. A Bohemian Grove employee decided to videotape some of the activities in the Grove and to give us the footage. The footage you're seeing was shot on a tiny digital camera, so the quality isn't the best, but the images are powerful. The individual that gave us this footage asked that we not release their name. Our source was able to confirm what we had seen in internal Bohemian Grove documents and annals, that the elite of the elite attend the Grove. Our source personally saw New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson in attendance. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, the famous newsman Walter Cronkite, and countless other luminaries. Without giving away the identity of our source, we can tell you this. The most elite encampment within the Grove is Mandalay. Other members of the Grove were not even allowed to approach within 100 yards of this compound, swarming with Secret Service, valets, private French cooks, and private security men. In the compartmentalized system of the New World Order, Mandalay is an elite within an elite at the very top of the pyramid's capstone. Things have changed in the last few years at the all-male encampment. Since its founding in 1872, no females have been allowed in. But under pressure, they've allowed women some jobs in parking cars and in the kitchens in special cloistered areas. Our source is male. We'll call him Kyle. He reported to us that it was a constant irritant inside the Grove, being asked by old men if he, quote, slept around and wanted to have some fun. During one of the festival's revelries, known as Gypsy Jazz, they paused to thank the author of the music. They talk about what a wonderful jazz player he was, but that sometimes he did hang around with women, and the crowd boos with disgust.
He disappeared from time to time, often with women. He thought stealing was fun.
The Grove's own internal annals brag that the Manhattan Project, or the plan to create the A-bomb, was hatched inside this building, known as the Chalet. The Strategic Defense Initiative, better known as Star Wars, was also the brainchild of Grove members and was born inside the Chalet. At the height of the Cold War, top Soviet dignitaries traveled to the Bohemian Grove for secret meetings with the heads of the U.S. government as well as corporate leaders. Our source worked at the Grove in the summer of 2004 and the summer of 2005, and he was able to obtain 2 program covers for the cremation of care ceremony, as well as a 2005 membership list, which reads like a who's who of U.S. and European elite. Former President Jimmy Carter, former President George Herbert Walker Bush, President Bush, Henry Kissinger, George Shultz. The list goes on and on. This is a video still of the sign at the entrance to the path to the Hillbilly Club where President Bush stays. Look at that happy little devil with his forked tail dancing and smiling and those sharp little teeth. Oh, it's so Christian. But again, President Bush had such a Christian name in Skull and Bones, Magog, or Satan's war leader. The Grove is dominated by Republicans, the supposed party of Christian conservative family values. But the Grove has its share of high-powered Democrats as well. It's also important to note that the Grove itself was founded in 1872 by West Coast journalists, and that the National Press Club adopted the iconography of the Grove for its Great Seal. There are 3 major icons used in the cremation of care ritual. Moloch, the owl idol, the curved staff carried by the high priest, and the eternal flame lamp, the Arabian-style lamp, which the priest uses to ignite his torch, which he then uses to burn the human effigy, Care. Here are video stills of the effigy after it has been burned on the altar in the morning. Many researchers of the global elite believe that real sacrifices are going on at the Grove. When I filmed the ceremony in 2000, I saw no evidence of this. It looked like an effigy, and the Druid priests were easily able to pick it up and take it up the steps to the platform. Our inside source informs us that there are actually 4 effigies used in the ceremony. One brought in on the back of the wagon, another that's used behind the trees, another that's brought across by the Grim Reaper to the steps of the idol, and still another effigy that is placed on a black altar before Moloch, the demon god, and burned. And this is the first and only time that video has ever been shot inside of the owl idol. We can now confirm that the owl is metal with a stone facing. Leaning up against a wall is the metal skeletal remains of Care. Care, or the conscience of the group, is symbolized by a human body. All that remains is the metal skeleton. Our source informs us that the final effigy that is burned is made of a highly flammable material, and that the local fire department from Monterio oversees this part of the ritual. That was an important piece of the puzzle, because in 2003 we traveled back to the Grove and talked to a lot of the locals who were mainly friendly. But when we talked to a couple of local firefighters who were with the Monterio Fire Department and asked them about the Bohemian Grove, they got very upset and told us to turn our cameras off.
Well, he was telling me about it's like where the president goes and stuff. And so we were going to, like, talk to him, and then he's all over. Hey, man, shut the camera off, huh?
More hidden video reveals some of the ritualistic cloaks worn in the ceremonies. Here are some more stills inside the Grove. Our social lives, going to the football game or the PTA, a little bit different than your average world leader or corporation chief. No, in their spare time, they worship Moloch and do mock human sacrifices. We just need to get used to that and accept them as our leaders. Think about it. If your neighbor was engaging in mock human sacrifices to Moloch, the demon idol that was worshipped all over the Mediterranean and the Middle East, would you let that neighbor walk your dog or house sit, or how about babysit your children, or be in control of the nuclear launch codes? Well, let me give you a revelation. They are in control of the national deficit, of Congress, of your bank account, of your local police department, and they see you as cattle, as their slaves. Some of the criticism we received came from an unexpected source. Harry Shearer, star of Spinal Tap and the voice of Mr. Burns on The Simpsons.
This is a get-together of very powerful guys.
Harry Shearer played the role of apologist in a British documentary about the Grove. Mr. Shearer, who is also a member of the Grove, said that they're just having fun when they have the cremation of Care ritual, and that it's a men's party where they blow off steam. But Mr. Shearer didn't stop there. In 2002, he produced a full-length feature film and released it titled The Teddy Bear's Picnic. Mr. Shearer has told the press that his film is based on the Bohemian Grove. The owl of Bohemia is turned into a pelican. Care is transformed into time. The Druidic rites are interpreted to simply be nonsensical sophomoric activities. Oh, and guess what the plot of the entire film is? That they're trying to keep their rituals secret. And 2 employees have hidden video cameras and are about to blow their secret wide open. I wonder who they could be talking about.
And I want to make an announcement for anyone who is parked across the street. Anyone who's parked across the street at the theater, on the theater grounds, you need to move your car.
Hey, hey, ho, ho, this rich man's camp has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, this rich man's camp has got to go. Hey, hey, this rich man's camp has got to go. Hey, hey, this rich man's camp has got to go. Hey, hey, this...
So, are you one of the Grovers?
I'm just here.
One of the strangest chapters in the unfolding Bohemian Grove soap opera was the fact that local protesters were angry at us bringing up the occult activities in the Grove. They said that we should only spend our time focusing on the political decisions that were made in the Grove.
I think it's bad enough to just stick with what they're doing to the Globe.
Local peace activist Mary Moore had been protesting the Grove for more than 2 decades. When Mary saw our documentary and heard our take on what we witnessed inside, she went unglued, calling us all sorts of names. We were wacko for thinking these rituals were strange. Why were we reporting on that? For the 2001 protest, the year after we snuck in, Mary turned over control of the organization to other local groups, but she was in attendance. We then caught footage of the local leaders of the protest group actually carrying out their own counter rituals in some type of bizarre white magic versus black magic war. They even had the old-fashioned witch's pot. I was wondering where the brooms were. They conjured spirits, brought them into the circle, concentrated their power together, and then sent the spell in against the Grovers.
Circle of protection around all of us and around this place.
Hail, guardians of the watchtowers of the east, spirits of air, spirits of changing winds, winds of change, be present here as we do this ritual. So mote it be.
I call upon the primal fires of transformation and creation, the shining face of the Father and the molten core of the Mother. In their sacred union we stand. Sacred fires even now.
Oh, spirits of the water, spirits of this beautiful river that runs past us. We feel you in our blood, moving through our body. Let us welcome you as we remember that we are one. Ho, spirits of the water.
Oh, spirits of the water.
May we not fear the dark place that we enter in order to learn from you, Mother Earth. Guardians of the North, be with us. So mote it be.
A little too freaky for my taste.
Yeah.
A little too religious.
This went on for literally hour after hour after hour.
Drive across and do all the symbols we painted on it and into this water and into the rib mass of this piece of rib. There's a little spell that we've been working since the election.
You mean the appointment?
That's right. Maybe you'll say it after me. It goes like this. Let power and resources flow. Let power and resources flow. To those who'll use them. To those who'll use them. For the good of the earth and her people. For the good of the earth and her people. And be withdrawn from those who won't. And be withdrawn from those who won't. Let's send that spell over into the...
Then a veteran warlock asked one of the spirits to stay and give Grove members a welcome as they drove in their luxury automobiles.
Winds of change, spirits of the air, powers of the east. We have felt your presence here and would like for you to stick around and give a warm welcome to the folks who are coming here. But go if you must, and please stay if you will. Hail and farewell.
Hail and farewell. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes.
Does it feel good to get loaded on the slave ships? Giggling happily. Face scanning cameras going up. You don't speak out against that.
In that cauldron is water from sacred places and from political actions all around the world. There's water there from Seattle and from Quebec City. And Charlottesville and other places people know of. The birthplace of Quetzalcoatl and Amatlan. And I'm going to take some of it actually tomorrow to Genoa, to the protest there against the G8, and we're going to do some kind of cauldron ritual in the midst of it, which will be interesting.
Now I'm beginning to realize why we're not supposed to talk about all the occult activities that are going on inside the Grove. It isn't magic or belief in magic that's the problem. It's not the occult. No, it's those evil right-wingers. And by the way, let's not mention all those top Democrats that are inside. It's pretty hypocritical. Now, to be fair, Mary Moore and many of the protesters were not involved in the ritual. But we did see leaders of the ritual directing the protest and moderating with police. The police even shut down the road so they could carry out their ritual. And to be fair, it wasn't just Western magic that was being practiced at the protest. There was a group there promoting Santeria. You know, that Caribbean voodoo practice, but they also mixed in some Aztec worship, so it was quite a grab bag of occultism.
What is the purpose of the offering for the altar? What is that?
Giving back to Mother, giving back to the earth. We just take, and consume. But today, we're asking everybody to give something back.
So this is to return something to the earth, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Since by doing so, we resurrect care.
Oh, okay. Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Our investigator talked to a local NPR reporter who had had an interesting run-in with what we later learned was the Secret Service.
Cool. I was alerted to very fancy cars standing in the side street here, and I walked up. The guy had his window down, and he had all kinds of fancy recording equipment on his seat next to him. And I held the microphone in, and I said, "Sir, we are curious about who you are. Would you please tell us who you are?" And he said, "Take your mic out of my car, lady, and step back." And I said, "Would you repeat that for broadcast?" And held it even closer. And that's all I could get out of him. And then he sort of tried to run over my toe. He turned his car around and disappeared in that direction. And people said he was on the bridge filming before. So he was somebody from the other side who was documenting this.
Right, the wrong side. Okay.
The wrong side, yes.
In studying worldwide occult networks, in modern times and throughout history, we always run into the same data. Compartmentalized pyramidal structures with a bunch of well-meaning dupes at the bottom, managers in the central areas, and Luciferian death cult adherents at the top. In India, it is Kali. The Mayans and Aztecs' greatest gods were the gods of death. It was the same in Egypt and in Babylon, as well as Rome and ancient Greece. But what about those sweet little Hawaiians? Ah, you guessed it, throwing virgins into that live volcano. The god of death demands it, so the rest of us can live. The Druids would bash their children's brains out and kick them into a peat bog. Noblemen would willingly give themselves up to the Druidic priest to have their throats slit before they were thrown into fiery pits, known as bonfires today. Don't forget the European tradition of the Burning Man. Take your strongest man when times get tough, strap him into a huge wicker effigy of a human and torch him. That will make the gods bring back the fertility. That will make the gods bring life to the tribe. Death brings life. They call it creative destruction. But in reality, it is simply a tool of the elite to abuse, subjugate, and dominate their populations for their own good. We're looking at ancient propaganda. In the fall of 2004, while in New York to cover the Republican National Convention, we ran into David Gergen, the Karl Rove of 4 presidential administrations. Okay, one last question. I read a Washington Times article many years ago where you had a comment about the organization, and then now it's been in the Wall Street Journal, it's been in a lot of different newspapers, and that's the Bohemian Grove. And back in, 1996, when you joined as a Clinton advisor, the Republicans were criticizing you, oh, what about Bohemian Grove? And then you countered them by saying, hey, I don't run around in the woods naked. What did that mean? Here is the before-mentioned Washington Times article where he said, I didn't run around naked like they do.
I don't know what quote you're referring to. I'm not aware of any quote like that. Listen, I am a happy member of the Bohemian Grove. I like the folks who come there, and it's really inappropriate for me to talk about the group beyond that. Thank you. Have you been there for the ceremony with the cremation of care? Frankly, I don't think that's something I need to talk to you about. Really? That's right. Well, I'm Alex Jones, and I snuck in there in 2000. I'm the guy that blew it wide open and got the video. It's been on national TV. Well, I disrespect you for that. You do? I do. But it's a lot of big public officials going in there. Don't we deserve to know? I don't know anything about you, and I don't know anything about your film. But if you go in there with an understanding, you violated that understanding by releasing that film, and I don't respect you for that. Really? But we have public officials. I'm sorry. You took an understanding when you went in there that you would not do that film. And did you have an understanding when you went in there? No. Did you crash it? Yes. Yeah, and it has no trespassing signs there too, doesn't it? No, they put them up after. Oh, I'm
I just
sorry.
walked in.
I'm sorry, sir. I've been there before. I know what the circumstances are, and I'm sorry you violated the understandings. That was not a gentlemanly thing to do.
But what about the ritual? Is the ritual genuinely?
Sir, everything. I don't owe you this comment.
I know. I appreciate it.
This is what's called ambush journalism, and I disrespect you for that as well. So thank you
ever
and goodbye.
been in the ritual?
It's none of your damn business.
Oh.
Right. Listen. You go around and make understandings with people and violate them. You ambush people on the streets, and that's inappropriate form of journalism. If you wish to practice that, that's fine, but don't ask others to respect you for it. If you want to, you can do. You're a free American, like anything you want. If you want to be uncivil and rude and ungentlemanly, that's up to you. But don't expect the rest of us to say, "Oh well, you're
there, Mr. Gergen."
I'm sorry, nobody sets policy in there. We try to be gentlemen, and obviously, you don't belong there.
Weaving spiders coming out here? Yeah, that is a three-pointer. Woo! Look how strangely he behaved when we brought it up. Why is he acting so secretive? And why did he get so angry when he discovered that we'd snuck in? You see, they take it very, very seriously. This is one of the hallmarks of the occult and secret societies. The word occult means secret. Secrecy is part of their religion. They revel in it. And when it's violated, they become extremely angry. How widespread is the occult? The answer is extremely widespread. Occultism in our society, and particularly in our government, at the highest levels of corporate America, is rampant. It is a well-publicized fact that the Reagans had every aspect of their lives governed by their astrologer. Imagine having your life controlled down to the exact minute that you give a speech by astrology, an ancient occult system that believed that the earth was the center of the universe. Eleanor Roosevelt admitted that she performed seances and tried to raise the dead at the White House. 60 years later, Hillary Clinton had her own seances attempting to contact Eleanor Roosevelt. Prime Minister Tony Blair and his wife practice the occult every morning. Tony Blair draws a circle and then conjures the spirit that he calls the light. He channels it and makes decisions according to what the spirit tells him. The Blairs' admitted occult activities are legion, and so was Adolf Hitler's well-known obsession with dark mysticism. Adolf Hitler belonged to the pre-Nazi death cult, the Thule Society, as well as the Thule Society. Both groups trace their lineage back to the Order of Death, founded in 1776 in Ingolstadt University in Bavaria, Germany. Then, of course, it spread to the U.S. with the founding of Skull and Bones.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go
I'm
on.
sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322?
First of all, he's not the nominee. And, look, I look forward...
Are you prepared to lose?
No, I'm not going to lose.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us? Not much, because it's a secret. Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code? I wish there were something secret I could manifest. 322, a secret number? There are all kinds of secrets, Tim, but one thing is not a secret. I disagree with this president's direction.
Aleister Crowley, who dubbed himself the Beast and the most evil man alive, was a fellow traveler with some of the most powerful people in British society, including prominent royals. The Church of Satan, the Temple of Set, the OTO, the Golden Dawn, Skull and Bones, Bohemian Grove, the Blue Lodge, the Scottish Rite, the 33rd Degree. It seems like there are hundreds of different occultic groups, but all they are different denominations in the same religion, the Egyptian and Babylonian mystery schools. Albert Pike, who was the supreme Grand Mason of the entire world, founded the Ku Klux Klan. But you don't hear Jesse Jackson calling for his statue to be removed in Washington, D.C. Why is that? Because Jesse Jackson is a 33rd degree Mason. Now, don't get me wrong. Most Masons are what high-level occultists call porch Masons or outsiders. They themselves are considered neophytes by those in the inner circle or those nearer the top of the pyramid. They're compartmentalized. They believe that their great work, as they call it, is to help society. But in reality, they're being controlled and manipulated. The Knights of the Secret Circle. The Knights of the Golden Circle. This is what high-level KKK members call themselves. But even low-level KKK members do not understand that the KKK itself is part of a larger Masonic organization. Most Masons detest the Klan, but they've never looked on their own temple walls at the paintings of Albert Pike that adorn them and asked themselves why the founder of the Klan is hanging in their temple. This is the power of hidden in plain view, a favorite trick of Luciferians. Where did this dark thinking start? This black spirituality? The central thread goes back to ancient Egypt and Babylon with the mystery schools. They knew that knowledge is power, and so secret societies were formed to guard the secrets of medicine, architecture, government, agriculture. Secret societies are nothing more than the first intelligence agencies. Knowledge had to be guarded, but over time, elites abused their control of the knowledge and used it to dominate their populations. And the same sciences of control are being used today. That's why the elite today relishes secrecy. They know that it is the fount of their power. They seek to dumb down the population, not just to hoard their secret knowledge to make us even more mindless, more domesticated, like braying sheep to the slaughter. Their religion is the science of sophistry, the science of the con artist, the science of the despot, the dictator, the tyrant, the controller, the charlatan, the liar. They come to kill, steal, and destroy. They are parasites. They are anathema to free, dynamic human societies. Know your enemy. Stand up for love and life and family and resist the New World Order and the Babylonian slave state our enemies are attempting to construct.
I want to tell everybody out in TV land how they can come to the Grove, where their elected leaders, along with the big bankers and the heads of media, meet, along with some European royalty, every year to decide how to run the country. You can fly into San Francisco, or you can fly into Santa Rosa. You can even fly into Sacramento, and you just drive out to Highway 101. You take Highway 12 out west towards the coast. You get about 10 miles out from the coast, right outside the little town of Monterey. And the town of Monterey, off the main drag, you'll take the Bohemian Avenue. And it dead ends right here at the 2,700-acre Redwood Grove entrance, where your world leaders, among other things, set policy for much of the planet and dress up in black and red robes and worship, Moloch.
To purchase additional copies of this film, or to see dozens of other films and important books, be sure and visit Infowars.com or PrisonPlanet.com. Or to order, simply call toll-free 1-888-253-3139.
Hey guys, get your cameras on. Yeah, what's going on? I've almost been arrested 3 times every day, anywhere in the city, videotaping anything. It is an absolute nightmare. And we're looking for patriots that know what the Bill of Rights and Constitution says, and that can see all of this and know that it's a fraud.
4 planes in 2 hours! How can that be?
A cop on 9/11 said that it was going to come down. I don't know how he knew that.
On the morning of 9/11, the CIA was running a drill of flying hijacked jets into the World Trade Center and Pentagon. Building 7 is further away from the towers and was not hit by planes. So if your building's owned by Larry Silverstein, it collapses because he's got a big fat insurance policy. And the Project for New American Century said that we need a terrorist attack on the Order of Pearl Harbor to get the American people behind a war.
Prescott Bush, he did a number of things that were not only anti-American, but were pro-Hitler.
A lot of people aren't going to know what I don't really know what it is.
Why don't you talk about NORAD standing down, Michael? Why not the really hardcore 9/11 issues?
Thank you, and goodbye. That's none of your damn business.
To preserve our independence, we must not let our rulers load us with perpetual debt. We must make our choice between economy and liberty or profusion and servitude. I place economy among the first and most important of Republican virtues, and public debt is the greatest of the dangers to be feared. It is incumbent on every generation to pay its own debts as it goes. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their money, first by inflation and then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of their property until their children will wake up homeless on the very continent their fathers conquered.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
What's happening? Where am I? I believe perhaps you understand now, pal, but you are afraid. JFK. Hartman, what does this have to do with my house and my dog? Oh, okay, that's enough. I want to go home now. This is the last president to stand up to the Fed. You must see. On June 4, 1963, President Kennedy signed Executive Order 11110. This executive order empowered the U.S. Treasury to issue real money without the Fed. It would have worked. Kennedy's plan to dismantle the Federal Reserve machine had begun. 6 months later, John F. Kennedy went to Dallas and never returned. No way. No way they could do that. The new president, Lyndon Johnson, threw out Kennedy's order. And since JFK, no president has dared confront the secret powers behind the Federal Reserve. They consolidate bigger and bigger banks, print more and more money, accountable to no one, decimating our nation's wealth for the benefit of a few.
In 1945, the Bretton Woods Agreement established the dollar as the world reserve currency, which meant that international commodities were priced in dollars. The agreement, which gave the United States a distinct financial advantage, was made under the condition that those dollars would remain redeemable for gold at a consistent rate of $35 per ounce. The United States promised not to print very much money, but this was on the honor system, because the Federal Reserve refused to allow any audits or supervision of its printing presses. In the years leading up to 1970, expenditures in the Vietnam War made it clear to many countries that the U.S. was printing far more money than it had in gold. And in response, they began to ask for their gold back. This, of course, set off a rapid decline in the value of the dollar. The situation climaxed in 1971 when France attempted to withdraw its gold and Nixon refused. On August 15th, he made the following announcement.
I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
This was obviously not a temporary suspension, as he claimed, but rather a permanent default. And for the rest of the world who had entrusted the United States with their gold, it was outright theft. In 1973, President Nixon asked King Faisal of Saudi Arabia to accept only U.S. dollars as payment for oil and to invest any excess profits in U.S. Treasury bonds, notes, and bills. In return, Nixon offered military protection for Saudi oil fields. The same offer was extended to each of the world's key oil-producing countries, and by 1975, every member of OPEC had agreed to only sell their oil in U.S. dollars. The act of moving the dollar off of gold and tying it to foreign oil instantly forced every oil-importing country in the world to start maintaining a constant supply of Federal Reserve paper. And in order to get that paper, they would have to send real physical goods to America. This was the birth of the petrodollar. Paper went out, everything America needed came in, and the United States got very, very rich as a result. It was the largest financial con in recorded history. The arms race of the Cold War was a game of poker. Military expenditures were the chips, and the U.S. had an endless supply of chips. With the petrodollar under its belt, it was able to raise the stakes higher and higher, outspending every other country on the planet, until eventually U.S. military expenditures surpassed that of all other nations in the world combined. The Soviet Union never had a chance. The collapse of the communist bloc in 1991 removed the last counterbalance to American military might. The United States was now an undisputed superpower with no rival. Many hoped that this would mark the beginning of a new era of peace and stability. Unfortunately, there were those in high places who had other ideas. Within that same year, the U.S. invaded Iraq in the First Gulf War. And after crushing the Iraqi military and destroying their infrastructure, including water purification plants and hospitals, crippling sanctions were imposed which prevented that infrastructure from being rebuilt. These sanctions, which were initiated by Bush Sr. and sustained throughout the entire Clinton administration, lasted for over a decade and were estimated to have killed over 500,000 children. The Clinton administration was fully aware of these figures.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And, you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
Miss Albright, what exactly was it that was worth killing 500,000 kids for? In November of 2000, Iraq began selling its oil exclusively in euros. This was a direct attack on the dollar and on U.S. financial dominance, and it wasn't going to be tolerated. In response, the U.S. government, with the assistance of the mainstream media, began to build up a massive propaganda campaign claiming that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and was planning to use them. In 2003, the U.S. invaded, and once they had control of the country, oil sales were immediately switched back to dollars. This is particularly notable due to the fact that switching back to the dollar meant a 15 to 20% loss in revenue due to the euro's higher value. It doesn't make any sense at all unless you take the petrodollar into account. Every human on this planet is enslaved, whether they know it or not. This is not the crude and primitive slavery of ancient times. It does not rely on whips and shackles to keep the oppressed in their place. These tools have been rendered obsolete by much more sophisticated methods. That most of the enslaved are unaware of their condition and would in fact argue fiercely that they are free is a testament to the effectiveness of these invisible chains. You've heard the expression, money makes the world go round. There's truth in that. Money is the prime motive for human labor in modern civilization. If you want food, shelter, and clothing, you must have money. And unless you're part of that tiny minority that has more money than they could ever spend in their lifetime, then you must work, beg, or steal for that money. That's why you get up in the morning and go to work, even if you hate your job. And that's why the specter of unemployment is more terrifying for most people than the prospect of spending 50 years of their life performing menial tasks within the confines of a fluorescent-lit cubicle. Of course, in Western countries, some are fortunate enough to have pulled away from the brink and do not live in fear that their basic needs will be met, at least for now. And yet they keep spinning the hamster wheel. Why is that? Could it be because money and the bling that it buys have become symbols of status and prestige? Money offers an illusory form of social validation, but even those who are not caught up in distinguishing themselves by how much they accumulate still must acknowledge the social stigma that comes with poverty. The combination of these primal motivators, the need for food, shelter, clothing, and social validation, is a very powerful force. It's enough to drive humans to engage in all forms of activity, even to the point of harming themselves or others in the process. The accumulation of money is therefore an accumulation of social and psychological power, and those who control the creation of money control this power at its source. So who controls the creation of money? Well, in the case of the US dollar, it's not the government. This shouldn't be an earth-shattering revelation. The fact that the Federal Reserve is a private institution owned by a cartel of the world's most powerful banks is quickly becoming common knowledge. Even the mainstream media doesn't deny it at this point. However, the full extent of what this means is only clear when you understand how the banking system really works. And unfortunately, this isn't something we're taught in school. Once you have it explained to you in simple terms, you'll understand why. Every dollar in circulation is loaned into existence by a bank. The process begins with the Federal Reserve when they loan out money to the US government and to other entities. You've probably heard this talked about before, especially in regards to the interest rate on those loans, which the Federal Reserve raises and lowers depending on the economic conditions. But what's never talked about in the mainstream is the fact that the Fed isn't actually loaning out money that they have. They are merely typing those dollars into existence on a computer. You may be inclined to believe that this money is based on some physical backing like gold, but you would be mistaken. The Federal Reserve hasn't owned any gold since the 1930s.
The Federal Reserve does not own any gold at all. We have not owned gold since 1934. So we have not engaged in any gold swaps.
When the Federal Reserve loans money to the U.S. government gives the Federal Reserve government bonds in exchange. These bonds are simply written promises to pay back the money that was loaned to them with interest through taxation. So to be clear here, the government is taking out a loan from a bank that is creating that money out of thin air, and they're expecting you, the taxpayer, to cover that loan. The absurdity of this arrangement is even more obvious when you realize that up until 1913, the U.S. government created its own money and had no need for a bank to play the part of a middleman. That new money loaned out by the Federal Reserve enters circulation through the banks, accumulates in the banks, and in the end, the banks end up holding all the cards. Not necessarily for the reasons you may imagine. Contrary to popular belief, the majority of money in circulation isn't actually created by the Federal Reserve, but rather by the ordinary banks that businesses and individuals use for their checking, savings, and mortgages. How is this possible? Well, like the Federal Reserve, ordinary banks are allowed to loan out money that they don't have. There are, of course, restrictions. Banks are only allowed to loan out 10 times the amount of money that they actually have. So if Wells Fargo has $1,000, they can loan you $10,000, and they expect you to pay back that $10,000 plus interest. This is called fractional reserve banking. 75% of all money in circulation is created in this manner. Now, as bad as this may seem, this is really only the tip of the iceberg. Most banks structure payment plans so that for many years, you're paying almost nothing but interest, and only start paying down the principal gradually. The result of this strategy is that in most cases, you pay far more in interest when you purchase a house than the house itself is worth. So here's the real question. If all money is created through loans, where does the money come from to pay for the interest? Let's say we reset the system to zero, loan $1,000 into existence, and charge 7% interest. We now have a total of $1,000 in the system, but we owe $1,000 plus interest, and that's more. The interest ensures that there's always more debt than money in circulation, because the money to pay the interest doesn't exist. Never has, never will. This would be obvious if there was only one loan being issued to one person in this manner, but when performed on a global scale, the reality is hidden and is transformed into a game of musical chairs where the person ending up without a seat faces bankruptcy and financial ruin. Because every dollar in existence is tied to a debt, this creates an unseen force that draws those dollars back to the banks, kind of like gravity attracts a physical object to Earth. The catch here is that it's the labor of the people that moves that money. Every hour that you work to pay back a loan or to keep the government from throwing you in jail over income taxes is an hour worked for the banks. The total receipts from personal income taxes just barely covers the interest on the national debt. And even the principal for that debt all ends up back in the hands of the banks. And remember, that bank created that money out of nothing. Once you understand that the money that banks loan out isn't actually an asset, but is in fact a piece of legal fiction, it should be clear that you're working for these banks for free. This is a cleverly disguised form of slavery. If you manage to pay your monthly payments, then you are a successful slave, and you are allowed to keep the material comforts that come with that status. But if for some reason you fail to make those monthly payments, then the bank or the IRS comes to take your house, your car, and anything else you have of value. And if somehow, even with this enormous financial advantage, the banks still get themselves into trouble, you, the taxpayer, will be forced to bail them out. No matter what, the banks win. To say the game is rigged is an understatement. You might be inclined to think that if you live outside the United States and you don't use dollars, then this situation has no bearing on your life. But you would be wrong. The dollar is both the world reserve currency and the only currency in which oil is sold on global markets. This is often referred to as the petrodollar status. This means that wherever you live, whether your country is an oil exporter or an oil importer, you are affected. If your country is an oil importer, then you are affected by the fact that in order to keep your country running, you have to acquire dollars. To acquire those dollars, you have to send goods and services to the United States or to someone else who did. Likewise, if your country is an oil exporter, you are affected by the fact that you send your oil to the U.S. in exchange for this debt-based money. You are exchanging something of real and tangible value for digits on a screen. And if for some reason the leadership of your country grows tired of this arrangement and tries to pull off the dollar, you'll quickly find the United States military at your doorstep ready to open up a can of democracy on you. Iraq learned this the hard way when they switched their oil sales to euros in 2000, and Libya when they tried to organize a gold-based currency for Africa. Debt-based money is a masterpiece of social engineering, the ultimate tool of the ruling elite. Yet in reality, the whole thing is nothing more than a construct of belief. Our chains are the chains of the mind, and the path to freedom must also begin in the mind. If we want a better future for our children and grandchildren, then we must work right now to reach a critical mass of awakening.
There's a chart I saw recently that I can't get out of my head. A Harvard business professor and economist asked more than 5,000 Americans how they thought wealth was distributed in the United States. This is what they said they thought it was. Dividing the country into 5 rough groups of the top, bottom, and middle 3 20% groups, they asked people how they thought the wealth in this country was divided. Then he asked them what they thought was the ideal distribution. And 92%, that's at least 9 out of 10 of them, said it should be more like this. In other words, more equitable than they think it is. Now that fact is telling, admittedly, the notion that most Americans know that the system is already skewed unfairly. But what's most interesting to me is the reality compared to our perception. The ideal is as far removed from our perception of reality as the actual distribution is from what we think exists in this country. So ignore the ideal for a moment. Here's what we think it is again. And here is the actual distribution. Shockingly skewed. Not only do the bottom 20% and the next 20%, the bottom 40% of Americans barely have any of the wealth. I mean, it's hard to even see them on the chart. But the top 1% has more of the country's wealth than 9 out of 10 Americans believe the entire top 20% should have. Mind-blowing. But let's look at it another way, because I find this chart kind of difficult to wrap my head around. Instead, let's reduce the 311 million Americans to just a representative 100 people. Make it simple. Here they are: teachers, coaches, firefighters, construction workers, engineers, doctors, lawyers, some investment bankers, a CEO, maybe a celebrity or two. Now let's line them up according to their wealth. Poorest people on the left, wealthiest on the right, just a steady row of folks based on their net worth. We'll color code them like we did before based on which 20% quintile they fall into. Now, let's reduce the total wealth of the United States, which was roughly $54 trillion in 2009, to this symbolic pile of cash. And let's distribute it among our 100 Americans. Well, here's socialism, all the wealth of the country distributed equally. We all know that won't work. We need to encourage people to work and work hard to achieve that good old American dream and keep our country moving forward. So, here's that ideal we asked everyone about. Something like this curve. This isn't too bad. We've got some incentive, as the wealthiest folks are now about 10 to 20 times better off than the poorest Americans. But hey, even the poor folks aren't actually poor, since the poverty line has stayed almost entirely off the chart. We have a super healthy middle class with a smooth transition into wealth. And yes, Republicans and Democrats alike chose this curve. 9 out of 10 people, 92%, said this was a nice, ideal distribution of America's wealth. But let's move on. This is what people think America's wealth distribution actually looks like. Not as equitable, clearly, but for me, even this still looks pretty great. Yes, the poorest 20 to 30% are starting to suffer quite a lot compared to the ideal, and the middle class is certainly struggling more than they were, while the rich and wealthy are making roughly 100 times that of the poorest Americans, and about 10 times that of the still healthy middle class. Sadly, this isn't even close to the reality. Here is the actual distribution of wealth in America. The poorest Americans don't even register. They're down to pocket change. And the middle class is barely distinguishable from the poor. In fact, even the rich between the top 10 and 20 percentile are worse off. Only the top 10% are better off. And how much better off? So much better off that the top 2 to 5% are actually off the chart at this scale. And the top 1%, this guy, well, his stack of money stretches 10 times higher than we can show. Here's his stack of cash, restacked, all by itself. This is the top 1% we've been hearing so much about. So much green in his pockets that I have to give him a whole new column of his own, because he won't fit on my chart. 1% of America has 40% of all the nation's wealth. The bottom 80%, 8 out of every 10 people, or 80 out of these 100, only has 7% between them. And this has only gotten worse in the last 20 to 30 years. While the richest 1% take home almost a quarter of the national income today, in 1976, they took home only 9%, meaning their share of income has nearly tripled in the last 30 years. The top 1% own half the country's stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. The bottom 50% of Americans own only 0.5% of these investments, which means they aren't investing. They're just scraping by. I'm sure many of these wealthy people have worked very hard for their money, but do you really believe that the CEO is working 380 times harder than his average employee? Not his lowest paid employee, not the janitor, but the average earner in his company. The average worker needs to work more than a month to earn what the CEO makes in 1 hour. We certainly don't have to go all the way to socialism to find something that is fair for hardworking Americans. We don't even have to achieve what most of us consider might be ideal. All we need to do is wake up and realize that the reality in this country is not at all what we think it is.
Just how rich and powerful is Lord Evelyn Rothschild? Historically, the Rothschild family wealth was hidden in underground vaults. The Rothschild secret financial records were never audited and never accounted for. Their family commissioned biographies give the illusion that their family fortune has dwindled, but researchers estimate their wealth at close to $500 trillion, more than half the wealth of the entire world. Besides their many castles, palace mansions, wineries, racehorses, and exotic resorts, the Rothschilds bought Reuters in the 1800s. Reuters then bought the Associated Press, which selects and delivers the same news stories to the entire world, day after day. They have controlling interest in 3 major television networks and easily avoid media attention since they own it. They also fix the world price of gold on a daily basis and profit from its ups and downs. Over the centuries, the Rothschilds have amassed trillions of dollars worth of gold bullion in their subterranean vaults and have cornered the world's gold supply. They own controlling interest in the world's largest oil company, Royal Dutch Shell. They operate phony charities and offshore banking services where the wealth of the black nobility and the Vatican is hidden in secret accounts at Rothschild Swiss banks, trusts, and holding companies. Although Evelyn Rothschild looks like a harmless gray-haired old man, make no mistake about it, Rothschild and his ancestors have handpicked presidents, crashed stock markets, bankrupted nations, orchestrated wars, and sponsored the mass murder and impoverishment of millions.
Review time, partner! And breaking news. To all of you who don't like conspiracy theorists, all of y'all who don't like truthers, who want to call truthers crazy, your fun is over. Those days of you having the illusion of credibility are over. The truth prevails over your ignorance. The truth is universal. You can try to say, oh, truthers are white supremacists. How does that work? Whatever you want to say. You've been demonizing 9/11 truthers all these years. You're demonizing Sandy Hook truthers. Well, if it was a real conspiracy, don't you think the media would talk about it? Don't you think it would be on the front page of the news? Don't you think? Well, if it was a real government conspiracy, why do you think they would let that be on the news? Because you know the news stations are bought and paid for. You know the news, they read off a script, right? You know the news reporters do that, right? No, you don't know that? No, I trust my news. They are more credible than you. You are just some truther. I watch the news and I get informed. You get informed, don't you? Those reporters, they give you exclusive information.
It's the 3rd time I've said that. I'll probably say it 3 more times. See, in my line of work, you got to keep repeating things over and over and over again for the truth to sink in, to kind of catapult the propaganda.
Now, you don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
Well, if you filled up your gas tank lately, then you don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you gas prices are on the rise. I know.
President, earlier this year you told us you had ordered your administration to cease and desist on payments to journalists to promote your agenda. You cited the need for ethical concerns and the need for a bright line between the press and the government. Your administration continues to make the use of video news releases, which are prepackaged news stories sent to television stations, fully aware that some or many of these stations will air them without any disclaimer that they are produced by the government. Comptroller General of the United States this week said that raises ethical questions. Does it raise ethical questions about the use of government money to produce stories about the government that wind up being aired with no disclosure that they were produced by the government?
There is a Justice Department opinion that says these pieces are within the law so long as they're based upon facts, not advocacy.
And I expect our agencies to adhere to that ruling, to that Justice Department opinion. This has been a long-standing practice of the federal government to use these types of videos. Agricultural Department, as I understand, has been using these videos for a long period of time. The Defense Department, other departments have been doing so. It's important that they be based upon the guidelines set out by the Justice Department. Now, I think it'd be helpful if local stations then disclose to their viewers if that's, that this was based upon a factual report and they chose to use it. But evidently, in some cases, that's not the case. So anyway.
To guarantee that's happening by including that language in the prepackaged report.
Yeah, I don't, oh, you mean a disclosure? I'm George W. Bush, and I.
Well, some way to make sure it couldn't air without the disclosure that you believe is so vital.
Ken, I mean, there's a procedure that we're going to follow, and the local stations ought to, if there's a deep concern about that, ought to tell their viewers what they're watching.
Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late-night television.
Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late-night television.
Conan O'Brien may be able to push the envelope on late-night television.
Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late-night television.
Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late-night television. Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on his late-night television.
Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late-night television.
Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late-night television.
Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late-night TV.
Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late-night television.
For these anchors to ask no questions, do no fact-checking, and hold no differing interpretation of the news they're delivering is not only absurd, it's downright dangerous.
Certainly, there were commentators and others, pundits at Fox News that were helpful to the White House. And certainly, yes, certainly we got talking points to those people.
Call Sean, call Bill, call whoever. Did you do that as a regular thing?
It wasn't necessarily something I was doing, but it was something that we at the White House, yes, were doing and getting them talking points and making sure they knew where we were coming from.
So you were giving them talking points.
But I would separate the journalists.
That's important.
Yeah.
You were using these commentators as your spokespeople.
Well, certainly. I mean, certainly. I think that happens to both ways when people go on other networks as well that are favorable towards the Democrats and so forth.
Nobody's ever fed me any crap like that, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, you're an independent-minded guy.
I thank you.
Yeah.
But aren't you a little embarrassed by the fact that your White House used a television network which is purportedly fair and balanced as your mouthpiece?
I think everybody in this town uses people that are going to be helpful to their cause to try to shape the narrative to their advantage. Again, I would separate the journalists because the journalists that I worked with were people just like the rest of the White House press corps who were trying to report the news.
You wouldn't use Britt Hume as somebody to sell stuff for, but you'd use the nighttime guys.
Yeah, I would separate that out, and certainly, and they'll say that that's because they agree with those views in the White House.
Well, they didn't need a script, though, did they?
Well, probably not.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny's step this year.
In consumer news, economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny's step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some of the spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Review time. And I am so tired of this deception right here. This is what got you in a chokehold. The left versus the right. Left wing versus right wing. Don't you know the wings are of the same bird? A little corrupt bird. Republican versus Democrat. They got you cheering for teams. They got you in this tribalism mentality. You don't even understand it. They screwing you over. I'm going to show you how it works in this video. Now, you get here John McCain over here talking about, oh, how the government shutdown was bad. Then you get people to agree with him and say, oh, John McCain is actually speaking some sense. He's right. It's the Republicans' fault. The Democrats love this little interview because, you know, it makes the Republicans look bad and gives them a reason to cheer for the blue team. Yeah, you're cheering for the blue team, but you're getting screwed over with this Obamacare. You're going to get McCain saying it was a bad idea to shut down the government because they wanted to repeal Obamacare. And what you going to do? Replace it with Romney Care, the same thing? That's where Obamacare came from, Romney Care. You see what I'm saying? Either way it go, we would have had this same type of health plan. Guess who else had the health plan? Hillary Clinton. You see, these New World Order compliant candidates, they are backed by Wall Street. You don't have a real choice unless you go outside the Republicans and Democrats. This is how they keep screwing you over. Let's get into the video.
Thank you, Martha.
You know, I've heard a lot of veterans so emotional to the point of tears over this issue. Talk to me about how you think this has been handled by the White House.
Well, I think it's been terribly handled by the White House, but let's have a little straight talk, Martha.
Straight talk.
They wouldn't have had the opportunity to handle it that way if we had not shut down the government on a fool's errand.
That's when the Democrats start cheering. Go ahead, get your cheer on.
That we were not going to accomplish. The whole premise of shutting down the government was the repeal of Obamacare.
Oh.
I fought against Obamacare harder than any of the people who wanted to shut down the government.
I bet you did.
I campaigned all over this country in 2012 saying elect Mitt Romney and we'll repeal and replace Obamacare.
But see, that's so dumb. Obamacare is the same thing as Romney Care. See, it's all about getting you to cheer for the team. Check this out right here.
Convinced that Republicans will win in November, and we will regain our majorities in both the Senate and the House.
Go ahead, Republicans, start cheering. Why are you blinking like that? Well, stop blinking like that. What's your problem?
And we will win House seats right here in Arizona. We will lead in Arizona.
Let's get to the point. Jeez, this uneventful speech.
And when we do, we will stop the out-of-control spending and tax increases and repeal and replace Obamacare.
And they cheering. But repeal and replace Obamacare means they're going to put in Romney Care, which is the same doggone thing. Think I'm lying. Think I'm lying. We're going to look at this later. But let me see. Here we go.
Governor Romney said this has to be done on a bipartisan basis. This was a bipartisan idea. In fact, it was a Republican idea.
Oh.
And Governor Romney, at the beginning of this debate, wrote and said what we did in Massachusetts could be a model for the nation. And I agree that the Democratic legislators in Massachusetts might have given some advice to Republicans in Congress about how to cooperate.
Listen to them now.
But the fact of the matter is, we use the same advisors, and they say it's the same plan.
Wow. The same doggone plan. Let's look at this.
There are some terrific Republican ideas. Mitt Romney in Massachusetts has initiated mandatory insurance so that everybody has to buy in, but then the government helps out those who can't afford it. Those kinds of bold initiatives, I think the Democrats have to put forward
bold as heck.
If, in fact, we can credibly claim that we can run the country and not simply criticize on the sidelines.
Now, this is key. This is in 2006. You see, he's praising this individual mandate, too. It's funny he's doing that. So either way it go, we would have had this Obamacare, Romney-care plan. But remember, I said Hillary ran on that plan as well. Obama didn't seem to like the individual mandate. That's how he got elected. Well, one of the reasons that made him look good, because he said he wasn't for individual mandate. Let's check it out right here.
Didn't represent her properly. They misrepresent her. Did they, and what do you say about that?
Well, obviously, I think that they represented her position properly, which is that she supported in the past NAFTA, which has been pretty hard on Ohio. And we've had an ongoing discussion about health care. Both of us want to provide health care to all Americans. There's a slight difference, and her plan is a good one, but...
Slight difference. This is the slight difference he's talking about. Check this out.
She mandates that everybody buy health care. She'd have the government force every individual to buy insurance.
Which is what Obamacare is.
And I don't have such a mandate because I don't think the problem is that people don't want health insurance. It's that they can't.
No, I don't want it. I don't want health insurance.
Afford it. So I focus more on lowering costs. And this is a modest difference, but it's one that she's tried to elevate, arguing that because I don't force people to buy health care that I'm not insuring everybody. Well, if things were that easy, I could mandate everybody buy a house, and and that would solve the problem of homelessness. It doesn't.
Uh-oh, watch out, y'all. He might do that next. So there you go. Obama with his lying self. Y'all need to stop with this. You're over here arguing, acting like you're against Obamacare, you Republicans. And they're talking about repeal and replace Obamacare with the same thing. What the heck is your problem? Get out of this tribalism mentality. And people who would say, oh, we need Hillary Clinton. Well, she down for the same plan. It's the same thing. It's the same scheme. And why in the heck do we have a president who not only tries to sell us on a product, but forces us to buy it and penalizes us if we don't?
Precisely because the product is good. I want the cash registers to work. I want the checkout lines to be smooth. So I want people to be able to get this great product.
Who is this guy? I don't know, but he seemed like a nice old man. Nice old man. No, this right here is David Rockefeller. This guy right here, you need to do some research on David Rockefeller. Feel free to do that whenever you get a chance. But people who know about this man right here, they know he is nothing but trouble.
Rockefellers, come back. We don't want your New World Order, you know? Leave Chile right now. Leave Chile. You are not... You're killing a lot of people. You're killing a lot of people. Leave here. Leave Chile right now. Leave Chile. Leave Chile. We don't want your world government. Leave Chile right now. Leave Chile, okay? Leave Chile. Your family is the most disgusting in the world, you know? Leave here. Leave. You also, you're a traitor to Chile. Mr. Agustin Edwards, you're a traitor to Chile, okay? You're a traitor to Chile. What you're doing right now, okay? 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 You know everything. You know everything. You're participating with him. You're participating with him in this. Your world government will fail, okay?
You heard what the man said. Leave Chile. Why was that man so mad at him? You want to know why? Because he knows the Rockefeller family is for the New World Order agenda. What is the New World Order agenda? Well, that is the plan of this secretive elite, this cabal, to bring about a one world government. And not only a one world government, but a one world currency. And not only a one world currency, but a one world religion to glue it all together, which would mean they would have total control. These small amount of people controlling the whole world has never happened before. What else is going on? Well, depopulation. These guys push for depopulation in third world countries. You can see here, Henry Kissinger. Depopulation should be the highest priority of U.S. foreign policy towards the third world. So what they're doing is systematically killing off large populations of third world countries, and they're working to bring America to third world country status. They control the banks. They control the money. They will do it. That is their plan. And eventually they want to have the population down to an amount where they can control all the people. But you know what? You don't even have to take my word for it.
I had a friend, Nick Rockefeller, okay, who was one of the Rockefeller family. And he, when I was running for governor in Nevada, he came to me, introduced himself to me through an attorney. And we became friends. We started talking about things. And I learned an awful lot from Mr. Rockefeller. And one of the things that we used to talk about was the ultimate plan of the banking industry, what they wanted to accomplish. And the goals of the banking industry, not just the Federal Reserve System, but the private banks in Germany and England, all over Italy, all over the world, they all work together. They're all central banks. And they're all part of the Communist Manifesto. You know, central banking is one of the major planks of the Communist Manifesto. We talk about America being a capitalistic country, but yet at the same time we have a central bank that plans everything for us, right? And the graduated income tax is another plank of the Communist Manifesto, right? So right there you have two major planks of the Communist Manifesto that have been brought in because of the Federal Reserve System, okay? So the ultimate goal that these people have in mind is the goal to create a one-world government where everybody has an RFID chip implanted in them. All money is to be in those chips, right? There'll be no more cash. And this is given me straight from Rockefeller himself. This is what they want to accomplish. And all money will be in your chips. And so instead of having cash, anytime you have money in your chip, they can take out whatever they want to take out whenever they want to. If they say you owe us this much money in taxes, they just deduct it out of your chip digitally.
Total control.
Total control. And if you're like me or you, and you're protesting what they're doing, they can just turn off your chip. And you have nothing. You can't buy food. You can't do anything. It's total control of the people.
And that chip's connected to a database that has your purchasing records, what you do.
Everything. Everything is in there, you know? And so they want a one-world government controlled by them, everybody being chipped, all your money in those chips, and they control the chips, and they control people. And you become a slave. You become a serf to these people. That's their goal. That's their intentions.
And if you look here, he even tells you this is what he is about. Some people believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and I am proud of it. That's David Rockefeller telling you he wants this new world order. Well, he didn't say new world order. Oh, so you need him to say new world order. Okay. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the new world order. See that? That's why you got to pay attention. But before we break it down, I want you to see this.
If you go outside the city of Atlanta, go east about 60 or 70 miles to the town of Elberton, and then go north on Highway 77 about 10 miles, you'll find off to the right what's called the Georgia Guidestones. Looks kind of like Stonehenge, these big, huge granite rocks set up there. This was done by a guy who gave a pseudonym, came in, paid cash, had this company set these things up in 1980. He called himself R.C. Christian, but that's not his real name. It says right on the stones, a pseudonym, false name. On these Georgia Guidestones, it gives the 10 Commandments for the New World Order. 10 Commandments for the New World Order. The first commandment was to maintain humanity under 500 million. I went there and looked at those things and said, now, hold on a minute. Today's population is 6 billion. They want to maintain humanity under 500 million. Looks like a lot of people got to die for their plan to work, which is, by the way, the plan. Jacques Cousteau said we'd have to eliminate 350,000 people a day. A third of a million people a day would have to be eliminated to save Mother Earth. Bill Clinton said we need to reduce the population of the earth to 1 billion. There are a lot of folks who would like to reduce the population of the earth. The Bible command is quite the opposite.
America's place in the New World Order should be? It's always been seen as the global policeman. But as you said before, it's hard to see with all these military conflicts where the winner and loser lies. What should America be doing
I think
globally?
The global policeman should be the United Nations. And I don't think we should need one. I think we should use courts the way we do in civilian life. It's time to put war and conflict, armed conflict behind us and move on and start acting like civilized, educated human beings.
Oh, you're so civilized, Ted. Let's look at your quote. A total population of 250 to 300 million people, a 95% decline from present levels would be ideal. That's Ted Turner, founder of CNN and New World Order supporter. You see, he donated $1 billion to the United Nations. This man is down for the depopulation agenda. He wants a one-child policy for 100 years, yet he got 5 kids. And you got to pay attention, because these jokers will tell you that they selling out. And they do that just so it'll go over your head. So you'll be like, oh, well, they didn't really mean that. They're just being sarcastic. It's not that serious. But then at the same time, people be like, oh, well, I ain't going to believe that unless they tell me. He telling you right here. So we get Shaq admitting to the whole world that he's a Freemason and he is proud of it.
What is going on there? That's a ring of my profession. You don't know nothing about that. Okay, well, can we get a close-up on that area? What? I don't know nothing about
What is the profession?
Yeah, which profession
Look
are
at
you
that man.
talking about?
Woo, that man so happy.
Is it a legal profession?
Of course it's legal. It's a ring of my profession. I'm trying to read it. Okay. It's too many times.
He's like, yep, I'm a Freemason. Ain't nothing you can do.
Are you a Mason? Of course.
And all them jokers around him know what's going on.
The secret ceremony.
Well, you might as well put your pinky out when you drink a drink. Put your pinky out.
You know, the secret ceremonies with the candles and the... Everyone wears...
Anyway, the Clippers.
But that is impressive, Mr. Old Deal.
I don't have a championship.
Anyway, so the Clippers...
Oh, yeah, I have 4.
2 exactly. Those he doesn't wear.
Those he doesn't wear.
The Clippers, yeah. As I was blinded by success.
Look at that man right there. That's impressive. I'm blinded by success. See, they know what the deal is when you're a Freemason. You know, they get all these movie roles and all these deals. Matter of fact, Shaq was on Grown Ups 2. It's one of the worst movies I have ever seen. Oh my gosh. Terrible. Anyways, he on there. There go your boy Shaq. Shaq's a Freemason.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go
I'm
on.
sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the rest.
Number
of it.
322?
First of all, he's not the nominee. And, look, I look for...
Are you prepared to lose?
No, I'm not going to lose.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, a secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets.
We had a worldview. Republican and Democratic presidents alike, from Harry Truman to George Bush, stood for freedom and stood for certain propositions that would make America strong and healthy and grow the middle class and shrink poverty and stand against communism. And after 1989, President Bush said, and it was a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order, and instead it looks like we got a lot of disorder.
Of its founders.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Bring it right back to David Rockefeller. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the new world order. So they're going to bring out a problem, and then they are going to offer a solution. One of their plans is to devalue the dollar so that it barely has any buying power. So then you go to the store, you can barely buy anything. You see the food on the shelf, but you can't afford it. What happens then? People start going crazy. People start to panic. Then people start robbing each other. People start killing each other. So then we need to bring in the police state. Oh, we're asking the government for help. And surely they are here to bring the order out of chaos, but it's not just any order, it is the new world order. And not only that, but they're going to bring about a one world currency to replace the old currency, and then they're going to bring it into a cashless society where you got to get the chip. All your money being on the chip. And also to glue it all together, the one world religion. Where these sellouts come to play, they are new world order compliant. They are here to sell you the agenda. They're going to let you know how cool it is to get a microchip in your arm. Some of y'all might think it's cool, but I know a lot of y'all don't like this type of stuff. So I'm just making sure you are aware of their agenda.
But anyway, I've had people calling me saying they go out to their mailbox and they find a little red dot or a little blue dot on their mailbox, and they wonder what the little red dot and blue dot is. Well, it's marking your mailbox by the government, so when foreign troops come in here on us after martial law, if you have a red dot on your mailbox, they take you out immediately and shoot you right in the head. But if you have a blue dot, they take you to the FEMA camps being built by Halliburton right now to house 50 million Americans. They're building enough concentration camps in America by Halliburton that Cheney's getting rich off of, Vice President Cheney's getting rich off of, to put those with the blue dot on your mailbox in those concentration camps. Now, if you go out and you find a pink dot on your mailbox, that means that they believe you'll be a good slave and you're going to go along with the program and serve our international Antichrist masters. So watch for that dot.
Listen to this, folks.
I was pulled to the side road, which was a new cut gravel dirt road in front of a business, a builder's supply business. And the right side of the road was filled with, which I thought was portable toilets. I never looked at them that close. same in color, maybe black, but which was an odd color. And I asked him about the field of black boxes. What were they? Because I'd never seen anything like that. And his statement was that if he told me, I would be one of few people in Madison, Georgia, that knew about them. And he says they're disposable coffins, I believe he told me. And he says there's 100, at that time, he said there was 125,000 there.
And the brother of the man that owns this field, that the government is leasing this field from to store these disposable coffins, this brother was given 3 years to set up temporary morgues around the country.
An ad hoc legal approach for fighting terrorism. President Obama today proposed something new, something called prolonged detention. Doesn't sound that bad, right? Prolonged detention. Did you ever see the movie Minority Report? It was based on a Philip K. Dick short story. Came out in 2002. It starred Tom Cruise, remember? He played a police officer in something called the Department of Pre-Crime. Pre-crime is where people are arrested and incarcerated to prevent crimes that they have not yet committed.
Mr. Marks, by mandate of the District of Columbia Pre-Crime Division, I'm placing you under arrest for the future murder of Sarah Marks and Donald Dubinos. Take place today, April 22nd, at 0800 hours, 4 minutes. No, I didn't do anything.
You didn't do anything, but you're gonna. Future murder. Creepy, right? Putting somebody in jail not for what they've done, but for what you're very sure they're going to do?
There may be a number of people who cannot be prosecuted for past crimes. In some cases because evidence may be tainted, but who nonetheless pose a threat to the security of the United States.
We're not prosecuting them for past crimes, but we need to keep them in prison because of our expectation of their future crimes.
Al-Qaeda terrorists and their affiliates are at war with the United States, and those that we capture, like other prisoners of war, must be prevented from attacking us again.
Prevented. We will incarcerate people preventively. Preventive incarceration. Indefinite detention without trial. That's what this is. That's what President Obama proposed today, if you strip away the euphemisms. One civil liberties advocate told the New York Times today, quote, "We've known this was on the horizon for many years, but we were able to hold it off with George Bush. The idea that we might find ourselves fighting with the Obama administration over these powers is really stunning." And it is stunning.
Have you heard that the Department of Homeland Security has purchased 1.6 billion rounds of ammunition last year? I mean, that's got to cost millions and millions of dollars. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this country broke? I mean, you turn on the TV, you hear how we're laying off air traffic controllers, how people are going to die because of it. I mean, Harrison Ford is in a tizzy, and we're spending this much money on bullets? Do you know that 1.6 billion rounds of ammunition is enough to fight a 20-year war and still have bullets left over? My question is, who is the Department of Homeland Security planning to shoot? Do you realize that over the past couple of months, our government has tried to pass bills through Congress allowing them to arrest American citizens without due process, allowing them to kill American citizens without due process?
And it's got the 5 regions for the FEMA camps, and it talks about barricades and barbed wire and armed guards, and it says that they've built the camps and that now they need to get ready to staff them, and that they need to be ready within a 72-hour period. And so I want to challenge everybody to call their friends and their families now and realize that the new economy is to put tens of millions of people, we already have the biggest prison population in the world, in this archipelago, this giant chain of facilities all over the country.
The following video details the contents of a Department of Defense document entitled Internment and Resettlement Operations, also known as FM 3-39.40. The document is 325 pages long and it is signed by Joyce E. Morrow, Administrative Assistant to the Secretary of the Army. It was created in 2010, however, has just been recently leaked to the public via the internet and can now be downloaded from multiple sources. In the description below, you'll find a download link for the document. I strongly encourage you to download it yourself and to verify everything that's being said here. The document outlines military procedures for internment and resettlement of civilians, and it describes the layout and the administration of these internment camps. It clearly states on page 38 that it applies within U.S. territory, and it specifically addresses the detainment of U.S. citizens, as is indicated by the identification procedures for new prisoners on page 146, which states that social security numbers are to be recorded alongside their photograph and fingerprints. Included in the list of organizations which may be involved in these internment operations are the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, the Department of Defense, and the United Nations. On page 56, the document outlines the responsibilities of psychological operations officers within the camps, among which it states that a PSYOP officer develops and executes indoctrination programs to reduce or remove antagonistic attitudes and identifies political activists. On page 281, the document goes into more detail regarding the role of psychological operations within the camps, specifically in regards to pacifying the population and ensuring cooperation. On page 238, it gives the conditions for the use of deadly force in such camps. Among the justifications for lethal force, it includes to terminate an active escape attempt. That point right there should make it clear that these camps are not benevolent disaster relief type facilities. On page 244, the document calls for the use of snipers during riots to, quote, scan a crowd and identify agitators and riot leaders for apprehension and fire lethal rounds if warranted. On page 260, it shows the basic layout for a facility focusing on detainment. It is depicted with interrogation areas, tribunal areas, and mortuaries. Each detainment facility is designed to hold 4,000 prisoners, and they are depicted with multiple levels of barbed wire separating compartments within the facilities, with a double barbed wire fence enclosing them, and watched over by 24 guard towers. On page 261, the document depicts the layout for what they call civilian resettlement facilities, which are designed to house 8,000 people. Though it uses the word resettlement, the plans show multiple levels of barbed wire dividing the sections of the facility, with double barbed wire fencing on the outside, as well as 16 guard towers. On page 262, the layout for facilities designed for what they call non-compliant prisoners is shown. These camps are designed to hold up to 300 prisoners, they have 3 interrogation centers, and are guarded by 13 guard towers. Now, if there's any question whether these plans are active or just theoretical, this should be settled by the fact that the U.S. Army has been running ads for job positions in these camps since 2009, and apparently, they're still hiring. Once again, if you look in the description, you'll find all the links you need to verify this information. It's important to note here that this document was created in 2010, which was under the Obama administration, and it predates the NDAA of 2012, which authorized military detainment of U.S. citizens. This clearly shows a long-term agenda at work.
He's saying he's a military police, and he says, and we've been sent footage before by military police and others, so I want this footage of them in briefings openly talking about gun confiscations. Now, that's now in the manuals that they're training to quarantine cities and towns and confiscate guns. We've had Navy SEALs on confirming it. We have the documents. We know that. But footage, not just in some Army manual, but footage could really, really hurt the folks that are trying to covertly prepare the military for basically civil war. Brian, obviously, you've got to go back in right now. Tell us as much as you can and how we get this footage, but describe it for us.
Okay, so I was in a briefing with FEMA. FEMA runs my old unit. I'm actually out now. I got out in September of this year. They were talking about suspension of the Constitution, Second and Fourth Amendment rights being taken away, and I openly asked them, are we going to take guns? He says no, but he says they will. It's clearly on the video. They will, talking about the FEMA guys with us. So that's the gist of the video. You could, I'm filming the floor because it kind of startled me when they said that they're going to suspend the Constitution under martial law, which is pretty scary to me.
Essentially, yeah, pretty much at that time, your Second Amendment, or all your rights, First Amendment rights, pretty much everything is not that moment just interrupted. Yes.
So you said that martial law suspends their Second Amendment, so I'm not going to, but would you say we would take weapons from people? Yes, we'll agree.
As a psychiatrist, I remember very well the condemnation by the American Psychiatric Association of Soviet psychiatrists and the Soviet Union for their use of psychiatric techniques and psychiatric medications to control political dissidents. Sadly, shockingly, we in the United States have become those same oppressors. We now have a policy as exemplified by the FBI brochure from the Phoenix Office on Counterterrorism, which says people who are defenders of the U.S. Constitution against federal government and the UN and make numerous references to the U.S. Constitution should be monitored as potentially murderous, and fanatical terrorists, by extension, should be considered mentally unstable. Under the new Freedom Commission, mentally unstable people must be medicated on a compulsory basis with lethal and untested but very profitable psychiatric medications.
Department of Justice memo, which tells local police what should you be looking out for in kind of everyday terrorism prevention and terrorism watch activities. And one of the things that is considered a potential terrorist risk is individuals who harbor doubts about the official story regarding 9/11. The memo adds 9/11 official story skeptics to the growing list of targets